that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 502nd episode, edition, whatever you call it, of Energy Week with George Harvey, that's me, and the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
Who is in the flesh at home.
But not in the studio.
But not in the studio. There you go. There you go. I'm in the studio, Tom is at home, and that brings me to mention the reason why Tom is not coming in is because he's kind of it's difficult for him to get in here. If we could get somebody to bring him in, it would be a huge help, and that would just entail picking Tom up at a little bit before 1 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, and then taking him back home at a little bit after 2.
And I can pay with time trade.
There you go. So if you're on time trade, maybe you could do that. I'm going to ask, I have people willing to donate on time trade, but you know, you don't have to be on time trade to donate. Anyway, Energy Week, we're starting this show. The show is being recorded on the 15th of December, and we're starting on the 8th of December, and
that's a week ago.
That's a week ago, and so we'll have the news from the 8th up until the 14th, which is yesterday. This comes from my blog, geoharvey.com.
Why we call it Energy Week.
What's that?
Which is why we call it Energy Week.
Isn't it amazing? I think that was just a coincidence, Tom. Anyway.
Well, I'm ably assisted right now by my animal.
By your animal. And that animal is an extremely ferocious cat?
Oh, very fierce. Very fierce. He's sitting here right next to me.
Yeah, I've met that cat. I don't think I'd want to get into an argument with it.
He's a nice little guy.
He would stare me down is what he would do if we argued. Anyway.
Well, we have a nice picture of the sky.
We have a nice picture of the sky. If you want to find links to the articles we're talking about, you can go to the blog geoharvey.com, or you can go down on your screen to a place where you can click to the blog that Tom and I use for a source, kind of a script on this. And our first item is from Renewable Energy Magazine.
I'll try and mention that just in case.
Okay.
Each article has a source. I'll mention that.
Yeah.
And some of them are quite comprehensive, so it's really worth reading.
Yes.
If you got the time.
This first one has a picture of Fish Lake National Forest. And I gotta say, in this particular national forest, you can't see the trees for the national forest.
Well, I looked it up, and Fish Lake National Forest is nearly 1.5 million acres in several towns in
Utah.
I guess it's Utah. It's Utah, yep.
That's what it says. What do you got for a title for this?
BLM announces geothermal lease sale in southwestern Utah.
The Bureau of Land Management, that's BLM, proposes to offer 2 geothermal lease sales parcels in Millard County, Utah, totaling 3,045 acres, which is 3,045 more acres than I have. The land is in Fish Lake National Forest, where the BLM Fillmore Field Office manages the subsurface minerals. So,
well, I never heard of this Fish Lake National Forest, but it's been around since 1907. So,
well, it's before your time then.
I guess. It's a pretty big national forest, 1.5 million acres.
I wonder how many trees it's got.
Well, from the picture, it doesn't seem to have many.
No, it doesn't. It might have thousands of them, though. You know, it's got thousands of acres.
Well, yeah, thousands of acres got 1.5 million acres.
Okay, should we move on, Tom?
Well, yeah, I think we ought to move on. We got another picture coming up here.
This is from ABC, which is Australia broadcast company.
And it's a picture of a solar farm.
It's a picture of a solar farm. And there it is. That particular solar farm, I'm not sure where that is. But you have a title for the articles.
Solar farm.
For the article, Tom.
I should have a title for the article, but I don't think I do.
Well, should I just go ahead and read it then?
Yeah, you got the title.
Okay. The title is Renewables Provide Providers to be Paid to Ensure Stable Electricity Supply. And the synopsis...
I didn't have that.
Didn't you?
Yeah, I don't know why.
In Australia, the federal and state level governments have unanimously signed on to developing an energy, quote, capacity mechanism, end quote, to pay renewable energy suppliers to be available to increase electricity supply at a moment's notice, providing dispatchable renewable power. And the word...
That's important.
It is. The word...
We'll touch base on it a little later in the show.
Yeah. The word dispatchable here means that this is a near firm supply, which means that
they push a button and it comes on.
Yeah, basically. And that means that the renewable energy suppliers are going to have big batteries. But the big batteries are turning out to be a real big benefit to the electricity in Australia.
Well, we've talked about batteries a lot on this show, and I know I've mentioned there's been more progress in batteries in the last 10 years than there was in the last 100.
I think there's been more progress in batteries in the last 10 weeks than there have been in the last 100 years.
Well, we'll be talking about that too, I think.
A couple of times. Okay, should we go on, Tom?
I think we should move on. Yes.
We have an item here from CNN, and
it's a picture of the Cowwood fire.
That's correct.
Doesn't look too scary to me, does it?
No, it looks scary enough to me.
More Americans are moving into harm's way as climate disasters increase.
A study by
doesn't come as a surprise to me.
No, this is all strange. A study by researchers from the University of Vermont found that Americans have moved out of some areas prone to scorching summer heat waves and hurricanes in the last 10 years, but many of them are migrating into areas that are hit by extreme wildfires, more heat, and worsening drought. And, you know...
They're going from the frying pan into the fire.
I think this is a result of misinformation that's being spread about climate change by people who are saying it isn't happening and who are being, in some cases, paid to say that it isn't happening by fossil fuel companies in order to...
Well, there's been a lot of money invested in fossil fuels over the years.
Oh, come on,
and
Tom.
And now we got renewables out there, which you don't have to pay for fuel. And these guys are scratching their heads. What are we going to do with all of our oil?
Yeah, well, we're talking about stranded assets. They don't want to have their assets stranded.
Absolutely.
Okay. More on that?
No, I think we've covered that one. We got an interesting picture coming up here from Friday, December 9th of the University of Sydney, which is, guess what? Guess where?
In Sydney?
Bingo! Give that man a prize.
Okay,
it came from Clean Technical.
That is correct.
Which does a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Clean Technical has a lot of stuff that we use.
Yes, it's true. What do you have for a title for the article?
Low cost sodium sulfur battery shows promise. What did we just say about batteries, huh?
Oh, we're always talking about batteries. Batteries have become one of the hot topics of energy in the last year or two.
Well, they have risen to the prime, to the front.
That's right. At the University of Sydney, researchers are touting breakthroughs in the lab that they say may need to lead to a new low-cost sodium sulfur battery with 4 times the energy storage capacity of lithium-ion batteries Their research has been published recently in the journal Advanced Materials.
Well, this is good news.
Yeah, it is. It means that we're getting, well, the big thing about sodium batteries, regardless of how they, how they're put together, is that sodium is super abundant. Huh?
Sodium's cheap.
Yeah, it's super abundant compared to lithium.
Well, you ever hear of sodium chloride?
I think if I have too much of it, when my feet swell. So yeah, salt. You don't want too much salt in your diet.
Absolutely.
So should we go on? We've got an item from Who, What, Why.
And we get a nice picture of a farm.
Yeah, I like. Whoops, wrong picture of a farm. I'm having trouble with my buttons here. There we go. There's the farm we're talking about.
Well, it's got a square silo. I don't think I've ever seen a square silo.
I think that's a round silo with a square roof, Tom.
Oh, I'm looking at it. I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think you're right. It's not a square silo.
Okay, what do you got for a title for the article?
Climate change is driving up food prices.
Oh, man. There is a strong link between climate change and increasing food costs. A sixth of agricultural production is traded internationally, which means that what happens in highly climate vulnerable countries will impact what Americans eat or drink. Damage from climate change is already happening. Yeah, well, I guess it is.
Well, we've talked about that. I mean, it's inevitable.
It's strange that they would even say damage is already happening. I mean, in relation to food, half of the vegetables in the United States come from the Central Valley of California, which is a
desert without irrigation.
Yeah, and it's just drought. They're facing horrible droughts out there. They're facing droughts so bad that they can't even irrigate crops. They can't even send water to some communities. So,
well, the Imperial Valley is basically a desert, but with the water from the Colorado River, it blooms.
That's correct.
And I don't know what the percentage is, but it's high. Of the food we eat, the vegetables we eat, come from the Imperial Valley.
I've read that it's 50%.
It's a good percentage, whatever that number is.
If I could make a suggestion to viewers, grow food in your own garden. And don't be afraid to do it.
That's never a bad idea.
The place where I live, at any rate, we have 6 different species of citrus trees. We have 3 different cultivars of figs. We've got a whole bunch of other things that are normally grow in hot climates. And the result of that is that we get enough citrus fruit to basically take us through the year. And some of it is...
And this is right on Elliott Street.
That's right on Elliott Street in Brattleboro, Vermont. And some of that fruit is harvested in January because these are small trees that are out outside all late spring, summer, early fall, and they come inside for the winter. And fruit is harvested in January. But you can grow onions, you can grow potatoes. The price of some of this stuff is going through the roof. I think the price of coffee's gone up about 50%. In the last couple of months.
Has it?
Yeah, I think so. That's my impression. Okay, should we go on, Tom?
Can't dance.
Okay, we have a
nice picture of a tractor here.
Of another farm, only this farm has got a crop that the previous farm did not.
Well, that guy in a tractor is Byron Kominick. We've talked about him on the show before.
That is correct. And the tractor, you'll note, is an internal combustion tractor, but that's going to be replaced too. This is from Clean Technica.
They're obsolete.
What?
They're obsolete already.
Yeah, I agree with you. Okay, what do you have for a title for the article?
Solar power and farming. U.S. DOE providing $8 million for Agrivoltaics. That makes a lot of sense.
It sure does. The U.S. DOE announced an $8 million funding for 6 solar energy research projects that will provide opportunities for farmers, rural communities, and solar industry. The funding is to support agrivoltaics, the co-location of agriculture and solar energy on the same land.
So there are 2 streams of income coming in.
That's right, and I'll mention to people who might have missed this in an earlier, I think it was 2 weeks ago, we were talking about agrivoltaics, and I was actually kind of stunned to discover that I think it was the National Renewable Energy Laboratory had done a survey of articles that had been published on agrivoltaics and found that on average, when tomatoes are growing under solar panels, their production doubles.
That's incredible.
Isn't it?
It actually increases.
It's amazing. And you know, I've known for a long time that there are certain plants that don't like being out in the sun, but I never thought that tomatoes might be one of them.
Well, there's a lot of low plants that we use regularly, tomatoes being one of them.
Yeah.
Tomatoes being another one.
Oh, tomatoes and tomatoes. I'm glad you made that distinction.
And, you know, onions and stuff like that.
And potatoes and potatoes.
And in the case of the one we're looking at in the picture, they can even grow corn under those things.
Yeah. And, you know, this particular array, they could have had sheep grazing under that. They could have had all kinds of things. Who knows?
There's a lot of possibilities here. I mean, we're just figuring this out now. We meaning, you know, the country.
Yep.
The world, really.
Okay. We have an item from BBC.
We're coming up on Saturday, December the 10th.
Yep.
And is that there a rhinoceros?
That is a rhinoceros.
By the way, a rhinoceros means horny nose.
Yes, I believe you're correct.
Well, what it says is, what is a mass extinction, and are we causing one?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is that we are, but we'll find out what it is.
Yeah. No credible scientist disputes that we are in a crisis regarding the speed at which nature is being destroyed. Some are saying we could be entering a 6th mass extinction, and by the way, they've been saying that in some cases for years and years. Opening the COP15 conference in Montreal, I should stop and mention this is not the same COP conference as the COP27 that was in Egypt. That had to do with climate. This has to do with basically mass extinction. UN Secretary Antonio Guterres said 1 million species now, quote, teeter on the brink, end quote.
I'm reminded of the song by Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah.
Where have all the flowers gone?
Oh, man. Yeah. That's kind of distressing, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. I did a search a couple of years ago, a number of years ago. It's probably 5 or 6 or 7 years ago now. I wanted to find out, people were complaining about wind turbines killing birds. And I decided I'd find out, how do they know? How do they know how many birds are killed by wind turbines? So I went looking for how do they do inventories of dead birds in various places. And I finally found a pretty detailed description of how that's done in a paper that was published in a peer-reviewed journal. And the paper talked about counting the birds and then having to estimate the number of birds that they could see had died because they would find a pile of feathers, or they could see that a seagull was carrying off the body of a sparrow, or a fox was carrying off the body of a duck or something. And they concluded in the end that they knew that 1,700 birds had been killed in the inventory period and area, and that they estimated that twice that had been killed that they couldn't actually account for. So they were saying 5,000 birds had been killed in the inventory period, which was a period of 48 hours during the bird migration. This is just unbelievable, except anybody who wants to understand that has to understand one thing. There were 6 generators, just 6. 1 nuclear, 5 coal, not a wind turbine in sight.
Well, one thing they never mention is how many birds are killed by just tall buildings.
Tall buildings,
like
big number. Big multiple of the number of birds that are killed by wind turbines. What about cats? The first killer of birds is feral cats. The second biggest killer of birds is domestic cats that are allowed to go outside.
Wow.
So, let's go on, Tom.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we can. We got a nice picture of Rachel Wang,
Yeah.
who's a researcher.
That's right, we do.
And she looks like she's wearing a priest's collar. Priests don't normally wear blue.
No, well, I guess you're right. Some of them wear purple, but that's when they get to a certain level that's rather high.
Purple and red are used by bishops. Archbishops.
Yeah.
Cardinals. They call them cardinals because they're red.
Because they have red hats.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is from Clean Technica.
Flame-proofing lithium-ion batteries with salt.
That's kind of amazing. We're back to the batteries. Rachel Z. Huang and others at Stanford University and the DOE's SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory developed a non-flammable electrolyte for lithium-ion batteries. Their work showed that batteries containing this electrolyte continue to function at high temperatures without igniting. What do you think of that, Tom?
Well, as I think I said already on this show, there's been more progress made in batteries in the last 10 years than in the previous 100. And you amended that to say in the last 10 months, I think.
Yes, I sure did. It's been, we're on a ride that's getting faster and faster here.
Well, there's a need, there's a demand, and people are stepping up to the need.
Absolutely.
They're filling the vacuum.
There's a lot of fame and fortune to be had by the people who solve the problem wisely. Okay, we have
an emphasis on fortune.
Yeah. Okay, we have an item here from CNN and a picture of a refinery.
Looks like a refinery to me.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Big Oil has engaged in a long climate disinformation campaign while raking in record profits. Didn't I just say something like that?
I think you did. I think that's what you said. Okay, big oil companies engaged in a, quote, long-running greenwashing campaign, end quote, while raking in, quote, record profits at the expense of American consumers, end quote. The House Oversight Committee found this after a year-long investigation.
So they're playing games. They want to keep getting that money coming in, but they don't want anybody to know about it.
It's what it sounds like. That is what it sounds like. You have more on that?
I don't think I do.
Okay.
I think we've pretty much covered that. We'll move on.
Our next item is from Renew Economy.
Well, we're up to Sunday, December 11th already.
That is correct.
And we got a picture of a wind turbine that's buried in clouds.
That is also correct.
And you'll notice there's something, a structure on top of that wind turbine. We'll cover that again a little bit later.
I keep hitting the wrong buttons here, Tom. There we go. You aren't seeing this. I'm hitting the wrong buttons and putting the wrong picture up.
Oh.
I'm being very...
I'm looking at the pictures that were originally designed to go with it.
Well, I've got that picture up now, and you're talking about a structure on the top of the wind turbine.
Yeah, we'll see that again later on in the show. We might trying to figure out what it is.
Okay. What do you have for a title for the article?
New South Wales declares first renewable energy zone with offshore wind in a plan to replace coal. Duh.
Right. New South Wales has declared its fourth renewable energy zone as it races to install new wind, solar, and storage infrastructure to replace the country's biggest fleet of coal generators. The country in this case is Australia, of course.
Well, the coal lobby in Australia is powerful,
yeah,
but they're losing.
It is the first zone that includes access to offshore wind power. So the Australians are starting to get serious about offshore wind power.
I think they are.
Yeah.
And they've got it.
Hello?
They've got offshore wind power in Australia.
They've got plenty of places to put offshore wind power. I think they've got more coastline than the United States does.
I think they do.
I mean,
and almost everybody lives within 50 miles of the sea.
Well, yeah. Although I've always thought, if I were in Australia, maybe I'd live in Alice Springs.
Well, that's dead center in the middle of the country.
Yeah, it's right in the middle of a big desert, but it also has some pretty nice springs. And I wouldn't live in Alice Springs because it would be too hot for me. But nevertheless, that's what it says. You have more on that?
No, let's move along. We got an interesting picture of a Tesla semi.
We do.
And if you notice that picture, the driver sits dead center in that cab.
Yeah, there are other trucks that do that too. I've noticed that there. I don't know who makes them, but there are truck manufacturers that do not allow for any passengers in the cab.
There's a back seat behind that, which will seats 3 more people. But the driver himself is right smack dab in the middle.
Well, how about that? And if you look at that picture, you'll notice that there are mirrors to the right and the left, but there's also TV screens just to the right and the left of the steering wheel, and those screens look to me like they have the pictures of the road. So,
yeah, they're scanning.
Yeah, the driver's got a redundant set of pictures of what's behind him.
Well, this is the interior of a Tesla semi.
Right.
So Tesla's starting to make semis, and I think they're just coming off on production of the first commercial models of it now.
That's right. That's right. They're delivering them to Pepsi. This is, as you said, from Clean Technica. What have you got for a title on this?
How Pepsi's Tesla semis will change hauling.
Yeah, the Tesla Semi represents major changes to come in the hauling industry. It could help prove to consumers and commercial customers that batteries can support heavy cargo vehicles over long distances, and that is an important shift to help reduce global supply chain emissions.
Well, this Tesla Semi is an interesting vehicle. It's got better performance than an internal combustion semi of the same.
Yeah.
Of the same size, and it's got a 500-mile range, which is fine.
It's got a 500-mile range, so you could drive a fair distance before you'd have to recharge it.
I'm sure you could charge it overnight at the end of 500 miles.
How many times have you driven 500 miles in one day?
I have done it, but not a lot. I don't do it every Monday.
Yeah, right. Well, I've done it also, but not a lot. Okay. Go on from there.
Well, we got a nice picture of some pretzels here.
Pretzels. Okay, let me get the picture of the pretzels up. Oh, there it is.
Well, one on the right looks like a salt-coated pretzel.
It does. Sure. This is from ABC, which again is Australian Broadcast Company.
Well, the picture is rescued pieces of coral.
Right.
And it says, and I quote, Great Barrier Reef coral nurseries show early signs of success.
Right.
You have to explain what's going on here.
Okay. A UN report recommended that the reef, in this particular case, it is the Great Barrier Reef.
It's big.
It's 1,400 miles long. Be added to the World Heritage in danger list. Now, pieces of broken coral are being rescued and rehabilitated so they can be transplanted back to the Great Barrier Reef. But
Makes sense.
yeah, marine biologists say this is no substitute for action on climate change. They're trying to save this reef. And
Which is significant in Australia. I mean, this is, as you mentioned, what'd you say, 1,700 miles?
1,400, I believe.
1,400, yeah.
But if the reef died and it started to break down, it would produce big changes on the northern coast of Australia, and those big changes would be, I think, devastating to the ecology.
I was just going to say they would not help things at all.
No, they would not help things. So, more on that?
No, let's move on.
Okay, we're up to Monday, December 12th.
And we got a picture of some solar cells.
And
what's going on there?
okay, you have a title for this?
Yeah, ultra thin printed solar cells from MIT.
I should put that picture up so people can see it. There we go. This is from Clean Technica. Researchers at MIT developed ultra-thin flexible solar cells that can be printed using semiconductor inks on scalable fabrication techniques. They are
printing these things basically what's a printing press.
Yes. They are much smaller than a human hair, weighing 1% as much as conventional solar panels, and generate 18 times more power per kilogram, an MIT blog post says.
Well, there's progress being made and things are changing.
Yeah. And these, the flexible solar cells have been around for a long time, and printed solar cells have been around for a long time. So neither of those is new altogether, but this is just one that is better, and they keep getting better and better with these. I did not see, maybe I did see and I just forgot it, what the chemistry of this is. One of the things that you do have to worry about, not so much in Vermont, but you do have to worry about in some places, is that some solar panels or solar cells, and particularly the thin film ones, have toxic chemicals in them. So if they caught fire or something, you'd be releasing things into the atmosphere that you don't want.
There's a lot of smart people working on this stuff.
Absolutely. That kind of stuff is not usually put in Vermont because the solar cells of that type, the ones that have the cadmium, for example, is a material that's in them. Sometimes an arsenic is another, and the ones that have that are really intended to go into hot climates, so they wouldn't be installed in Vermont.
But sodium and potassium are being used.
Right. I did research on solar cells that I knew were around in Vermont, and I found that the particular brand that I was looking at, I didn't spot anything that was potentially toxic. So, and as I said, I don't know what the chemistry of these things are. So it could be that these are absolutely non-toxic. I just don't know.
Well, it's progress.
It is. Should we go on, Tom?
Let's move on.
Okay, we have a nice picture of Australia.
I would have figured that was the American West.
I would have also, but there's certain similarities.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Comes from
Cosmos.
Common Man is, what is it? Common Man?
No, Cosmos magazine.
Cosmos magazine, yes.
That's right. What do you?
Australia already at worst case climate scenarios for 2030.
Oh, this is distressing.
This is not good news.
No, it's not. Australia already appears to be experiencing the worst case climate scenarios that were projected to occur 8 years from now.
So they're happening earlier.
The finding has revealed, was revealed by world-renowned climatologist David Carrolley, analysis of how closely projections published in 2015 align with current conditions. So it took half as long to get to the worst case scenario as he was projecting for the worst case scenario. This is not good.
Not good news.
It's not terribly surprising when you think about the really awful things that have happened in Australia, the fires, the floods. It seems like if they aren't having a fire, they're having a flood. It's just that simple. And you know, we've seen pictures of people having to be rescued from beaches because they were driven into the sea by fires that are in a forest behind them. This is a difficult thing. So we'll see where that goes. Anyway.
So tell me, how do you start a flood?
How do you what?
Start a flood?
I don't know. How do you start a flood?
You don't, it happens.
Right. I saw a flood.
You can start fires, but you can't start floods.
Right. I saw a flash flood when I was a kid. I was in a private boarding school that was on the banks of a river, and there was the river was completely frozen, and it broke up. The ice broke up in the spring, and it caused an ice jam. And the river,
so you had a flash flood.
Flash flood. The river rose about 12 feet in probably, I'm going to say, 5 or 6 minutes at most.
Wow.
And it had, the stream that was behind the school backed up. It backed up over a dam that was on a pond. It flooded football fields and all kinds of things. It was really quite impressive. And
I lost a car to a flash flood right here in Brattleboro.
Yeah, I know you did. I know you did. Okay, we should move on, Tom. There's this next one. Next one that's coming up.
Look at this picture, huh?
Yeah, look at this.
This is an interesting picture. Now that's real.
This is real, and I want to. You know, I'm gonna describe this picture in a little detail here. This thing that looks like breaking waves is clouds. Now below the clouds, you see a band of lighter color. That is actually sky in the distance. Then you see a band of blue below that, which is kind of a lighter blue, and that's distant mountain ridge. Then you see a darker blue band, and that is a mountain ridge that's closer. Then you see something that looks kind of like a reflection in a river, but it isn't. It's mist in a valley. And then below that, you see farm fields. And where you see those farm fields, you can see how big this whole thing is. And I chose this to go into the show for a reason. This is from the BBC. So do you have?
It's a very interesting picture. I mean, it looks like ocean waves.
It does. It's called a Kelvin.
And it's clouds.
Kelvin-Helmholtz instability. And it's a very well-known scientific thing that happens. And if you go to Wikipedia or just go to a Google search and search Kelvin-Helmholtz instability, you can get lots and lots of pictures that are like this. They all have this same kind of feature. What have you?
I've never seen anything like it.
Neither have I. Well, actually, I should say, you and I have both seen Kelvin-Helmholtz instabilities, but not this way in clouds And it's a common thing. In fact, I think when a person blows a smoke ring, that's a Kelvin-Helmholtz instability. But it happens very often in streams and things like that, where you see things swirling around and stuff like that. Anyway, this is from the BBC. What do you have for a title?
Kelvin and Helmholtz are scientists.
That's correct.
Rare wave clouds amaze skywatchers in Wyoming. Well, I would say that would amaze me.
Yep. A stunned skywatcher in Wyoming snapped photos of a rare cloud formation that looked like ocean surf. Quote, "This was special and I immediately knew I needed to capture it," end quote, said Rachel Gordon. Kelvin-Helmholtz instability should remind us of how amazing nature can be. The reason I wanted to put this up is because, as I said in the caption to this, I don't know of any conspiracy theory that explains this. Now, I have no doubt that if we sat down for the rest of the afternoon trying to figure out conspiracy theories, we could come up with a dozen wacko explanations of this. Science knows...
Well, there are conspiracies going on, let's face it.
Oh, yeah, and the biggest one, I think, this is my favorite conspiracy theory, is that somebody out there is generating conspiracy theories. and I really believe that. There are things...
There's a program you can buy for your home computer that generates conspiracy theories.
Is there? I didn't know that. I think, you know, we have to be really careful of conspiracy theories. A few of them happen to be true, I believe.
Oh, yeah, some of them
Not
are
many.
true. Some of them are true.
Yeah, some are
I mean,
true.
there are conspiracies out there.
There are, absolutely. But you have to be really careful. You can't just
Well, they
accept
invented
things.
the term conspiracy theory to debunk conspiracy theories.
Yeah. Okay, do we need to press on or
Let's move on. We got another one coming up for Tuesday, December 13th.
what a good idea.
There's a good picture there of a lot of storage.
That is a lot of storage. It's 40 storage units, and this is from Clean Technica.
40 Tesla megapacks replace 70-year-old generating plant in Belgium.
Yeah, the Tesla Megapack is bringing changes to the utility grid in the Belgian city of Lessine. I don't know how to pronounce it. Which has depended on a gas-fired turbine for its electricity for 70 years. The plant was built in 6 months. It provides frequency regulation on the Belgian electricity network. Now,
let me explain a little bit about frequency regulation.
Good idea.
When supply exceeds demand, the grid frequency increases and vice versa.
Right.
It's just not a desirable situation.
It makes your clock speed up or slow down.
Any kind of clocks, including the clock on your dresser top, or the clock in some complicated mechanical machinery somewhere.
But not usually computers.
No, they got their own clocks?
They've got their internal clocks, which are crystals.
Uh-huh.
It's a different kind of thing.
Regulation ensures a balance of supply and demand at all times. That's why they want to regulate this grid frequency there.
Right.
Particularly over short time frames from seconds to minutes. If these clocks are not steady, a lot of industrial processes depend upon them.
Yeah.
And they're not going to happen right.
Yes, that's right. And if they get too out of whack, you're going to have burned out motors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So this is very important.
Yeah. And by the way, frequency regulation cannot be done by baseload power plants, which means cannot be.
Because they can't turn on and off quick enough.
That's right. Which means in turn that you cannot run a grid that's based on baseload power plants on just baseload power plants, any more than you could run a grid on solar power alone. Both are equally impossible. So
Well, there isn't too much solar power available at night.
No, but the base load power, what's the chance that a base load power plant is going to supply 100% of the grid's demand? It might never happen in the entire history of that plant. The plant is designed to supply the assumed base load, the lowest load in its history. So, you know, anyway, we should move on, Tom, I think. You have more on this?
Yes.
Okay. Here we have...
Interesting picture of a pipeline, but it's a very special kind of pipeline.
It is indeed. This is a hyperloop, and the article is from Clean Technica.
Denmark's potential role in Nordic hyperloop solutions.
Man.
So those are hyperloops.
Those are hyperloops. Hyperloop serves relatively small autonomous vehicles called pods. These are not things that look like cars, that move in an almost airless tube on a magnetic track at high speed, up to 1,000 kilometers per hour, which is 620 miles per hour. I got news for you. A lot of planes don't fly that fast.
No, they don't. Well, these things are evacuated tubes, so there's not much air in there.
Yep.
And this is a way of moving large numbers of people efficiently.
Yeah. They're proposing to build one of these things in Denmark, and it's going to go from one island to another. Denmark is largely made up of islands. Copenhagen is on an island, a big island. So this article, if you go to it, you can see a lot of pictures of what these things look like. But they're just kind of round things, you know.
Well, it makes sense. They're isolating the movement of people from the atmosphere, basically.
That's right.
They're putting them in these tubes, and they can move a lot of people quickly.
A lot of people quickly. Okay, move on.
Move large numbers of people efficiently.
Yes. Should we move on, Tom?
Can't dance.
We have a nice picture of a Ford F-150 Lightning and an article.
Well, this is interesting. It's a pickup truck, but it's got a trunk. Where there used to be a motor, there's a trunk. They call it a frunk.
How does it drive?
Well, there's motors in the wheels.
I got news for you. What they've got is little doggies in squirrel cages.
Is that what it is?
I think that's what it is. I saw that on Little Rascals when I was a kid.
That's pretty clever.
Okay, this is from Clean Technica.
U.S. Forest Service aims for a fleet of 17,000 battery electric vehicles and is piloting Ford F-150 Lightning, which that's the electric version of the F-150 truck,
right,
which I think is the most popular pickup truck in America.
I think it's probably the most popular in the world.
It could very well be.
The U.S. Forest...
But this is interesting because typically pickup trucks haven't had trunks.
Yeah, and this thing has a trunk where the motor is.
Where do you put your golf clubs?
Well, in a pickup truck, you put them behind the seat or in the back.
But here you can hide them in the trunk.
That's right. U.S. Forest Service is testing the Ford F-150 Lightning pickup as it begins to transition its 17,000 vehicles, which are currently fossil fuel powered, to a rugged, sometimes off-road fleet of over 17,000 battery electric vehicles.
Well, they do provide greater security.
Yes, indeed. They provide a lot of things. You know.
Oh yeah, well you got a big frunk there that you never had before.
You also don't have a gas tank full of gasoline, and gasoline, in my opinion, is dangerous stuff. Much more dangerous.
You know, we're so familiar with it, we ignore it. But you're absolutely right. It's pretty dangerous to keep gasoline in a car.
The likelihood of a fire in a car, I read this a couple of months ago, the likelihood of a fire in a car, you have all of this stuff about batteries catching on fire. A gasoline-powered fire car is 40 times as likely to be consumed by a fire as one that's electric. And where
40 times?
40
Wow.
times, yeah.
Well, the electric car doesn't have all that fuel.
That's right. That's what it's all about. But people, as you said, are used to the gasoline, so they don't think about it. Okay, our next item is from Mong Bay. I'm going to put up
we got a picture of some deer.
Deer. Actually, no, those are greyhounds that have had antlers tied to their heads.
Is that what they are?
That's what they
Actually, they're not deer either. They're caribou.
Well, I forget how caribou fit into that whole
Well,
thing.
in Europe, they call them reindeer.
Oh, okay, yeah, they're reindeer, so they're deer of a sort. Okay, what do you got for a title?
Counterintuitive. Large wild herbivores may help slow climate change. Huh?
Yeah, in the battle to combat climate change, large herbivores like elephants rambling about, stripping branches, chomping tree seedlings, and even uprooting full-grown trees appear to be the enemy. But a paper published in the journal Current Biology begs to differ. So, you know, this is something that I've come across time and again, where we've seen pictures of large herbivores, cattle being an example, deer in this example, elephants, other large herbivores. It turns out that the forests and so forth grow a whole lot faster. The grass grows faster. The topsoil grows thicker if these guys are around to disturb
things. This is a
things.
natural thing that's been occurring for a million years.
Yeah, and you know, you have to be careful before you decide to tell Mother Nature that she doesn't know what she's talking about.
You can't tell Mother Nature much, I tell you that.
That's right. Oh, should we go on?
Can't dance.
Okay, we have a picture of a red Tesla, and I
And
believe...
you notice there's no grill, huh?
Yeah, I like it without the grill. I think this is a Model S. I don't know what that symbol would be on the right of the license plate if it isn't an S.
I can't read it.
Anyway, this is from Clean Technica, and I'll bet you have a title to go with it.
Tesla sold over 100,000 Shanghai-built EVs in November. Now, Tesla's an American company, isn't it?
It is, but it's got
And they're building in China.
They have a big plant in China, and those Chinese Teslas are being shipped all over the world. The Chinese auto market slumped in November with an overall drop in sales across the market. Nevertheless, Tesla Gigafactory Shanghai posted record numbers during the same month. Some say the news shows Tesla's electric vehicle dominance in the world's largest auto market. I will add to that, some people say that isn't what it shows. So we'll just have to see.
Well, I think Tesla's in the right place at the right time.
I think you're right. And as a matter of fact, I think Elon Musk is kind of a genius.
I was going to say he's a pretty smart guy.
He's a pretty smart guy, that's right. I am a little bit concerned that he might be thinking a little bit too highly of himself, which is something that geniuses do sometimes. And, you know, one of the things that geniuses do is they decide that they know more about something than everybody else, and so as a result of that, they decide that they know more about how shoes are made or what you should do psychologically or something than other people do, even if they're shoemakers or psychologists. And, you know, I think Elon Musk has not quite figured that out. This purchase of Twitter, I feel very worried about that. But nevertheless, the car company seems to be doing well.
It is. It is doing that. It is doing well.
Okay,
Let's
I think
move along.
we're up to our last item here, Tom.
Well, remember I said we were going to look at those things on top of the turbine?
Yes, that's right.
Another
I remember.
picture of it.
There is a picture of one.
It looks like two little houses. area there with all sorts of turbines. You got to have people there to service those turbines, and they got to live somewhere.
You do, but I think they would be living on separate. They wouldn't be living on a wind turbine. I can tell you that.
Well, we've seen pictures of basically hotels built.
Yeah.
In the sea, just like that.
Yeah.
But I can't figure out what else those things are because they look like houses.
Well, I think those are things that are put up so the wind turbines can be serviced. And you know, a person's got to climb up a ladder inside this thing, which is like climbing, in some cases.
Yeah, it's a big spiral staircase.
38. No, this is a vertical ladder, and it goes up like 38-story tall vertical ladder, and they climb straight up.
Takes a little while.
Oh man, I'm not going to do that. 3 steps off the ground is about as much as I can take. And they get up there, and then they have to check the lubrication and make sure this and that is working
like
properly.
I said, these things require service.
They do indeed. And I think the things that you're talking about are at the substations out at sea. Anyway, this is from Renews.
That's exactly right.
This is from Renews. I wonder what
Taiwan awards 8.7 gigawatts of capacity in round 3.
8.7.
Now, you've heard me say before, gigawatts are bigawatts.
That's right. Taiwan's Ministry of Economic Affairs has awarded tenders to more than 8,700 megawatts, which is 8.7 gigawatts, of offshore wind turbines. This is just offshore, just offshore in the country. Among those who entered bids, total of 6 developers and 10 projects have qualified for the first round selection for the Phase 3 zonal development auction. So Taiwan is looking for 8.7 gigawatts of offshore capacity. I've mentioned this many times before, but it's always worth repeating. A gigawatt of wind power is not the same as a gigawatt of nuclear power or coal power or natural gas, because the wind isn't always blowing.
I was just going to say, it's not constant, whereas
right.
You've got a nuclear plant running, it's running 24/7.
It's running 24/7, 90% of the time. Okay? That's one thing you also have to note, because those nuclear plants have to be refueled. And they are going to be down often for weeks when they're refueled.
Yeah, they're down. When they're refueled, they're down for a long time.
Long time. So 8.7 gigawatts might be the equivalent of 3 large nuclear power plants, maybe 2. I don't know. But I mean, the capacity factor for wind power, offshore wind power, might be 50%, where the capacity factor of nuclear might be 90%. But this is
8.7 gigawatts is a lot of watts.
It is. That's right.
And Taiwan is not a very large island.
That is correct. And I think, actually, you know what, Tom? We're running out of time, so we have to say, I'm going to put up our final slide here. Tell all the people out there to have an impressively rewarding week. And Tom and I will wave goodbye, unless you have more to say.
Y'all come back and see us now, you hear?
I think you've said that before. I'm going to wave goodbye. Tom is waving goodbye.
I'm waving goodbye. My dog is waving goodbye, too.